welcome back to In Focus. Now, with the U.S. healthcare reform battle almost over, or nearly over, advocates now for U.S. immigration reform are asking lawmakers in Washington to enact legislation that will give legal status to an estimated 12 million undocumented immigrants. Thousands of people descended on Washington, D.C. last weekend to hold President Barack Obama to one of his campaign promises, passing immigration reform. The crowd was composed of mostly people from Central and South American countries, representing both legal and undocumented immigrants in the U.S.
To the Republican leadership in the Senate, to the Democrats in the Senate, and also in the House, and the President, Barack Obama, we want immigration reform now!
The urgency for reform was evidenced by the presence of high-powered guests who included church leaders, political and civil rights activists, as well as members of Congress. There have been many such rallies for immigration in the past, but this event is described as the biggest, with many traveling from across the country. Civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson.
The pressure of the people determine the length of time. Today, this demonstration cannot be ignored.
Immigration reform would affect everyone who's in the country without proper documentation who will be subject to deportation. This includes Africans, who are the third largest immigrant group in the U.S. This group is called the Ghanaian Civic Association, and members of it traveled from Staten Island, New York. Charles Appiah, who represents the group, says the small presence of Africans at this rally does not mean they're not affected.
We have a lot of Hispanics here. I mean, we are just a minority in this place. But, I mean, this is a starting point for us to continue to grow and build the blocks. I mean, the African blocks that you were probably expecting. And we'll get there. I mean, sooner or later, we're going to get there. But we have to start from somewhere.
This couple is from Cameroon and says the U.S. as an immigrant nation should understand that people come here for opportunity.
So I'm here today to at least contribute with all my brothers, whether it's Latino or whatever. For me, I believe we cannot treat people according to purpose.
Immigration activists at this event are now putting a lot of pressure on Mr. Obama and Congress to not only introduce but pass immigration reform, saying failure to do so will have consequences come election time. Impatience with Mr. Obama over the slow pace of immigration reform was noticeable in some speakers invited to address the crowd.
President Obama, stop pointing our fingers at the Congress. You all have the power, and if you fail to deliver, we will hold you accountable.
An estimated 66% of Latinas voted for Mr. Obama in the 2008 presidential vote, something speakers here wanted Mr. Obama to remember.
Don't forget that in the last presidential election, 10 million Hispanic voters came out to vote. That was an important message.
President Obama assured the crowd via videotape that he has not reneged on his promise for reform.
I pledge to do everything in my power to forge a bipartisan consensus this year on this important issue.
Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer of New York and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina are spearheading immigration reform efforts. Activists and supporters say immigration reform, like healthcare, is inevitable.